Hey YouTube, what's going on? We're back outside in the rain, nighttime. I had to switch off. Last time came good sunny weather, which I know I don't play. So anyway, we're here, back again, and I want to continue the conversation from where we were last time. We're talking about social media. We were talking about the different generations. And a short note on that. I feel like right now, everybody's having the conversation about these generations. You know, this time that we're in, time itself, I feel like is the biggest topic. And as far as time goes, the different, generations, Gen X and baby boomers, Gen Zers and millennials, and you have generations coming after, and those before, of course. But I find that the concepts of different people, different people's ages, and the time periods that they come from is really what's being talked about right now as we get into the spring season. But if I kind of look at the larger scope of things, like within the last year's period, there's been so many conversations about time speeding up, about breaking time down, proportions and time's value. So I just really wanted to make note of that. I feel like time is such a good conversation, and in that, quite recently, these ideas about the different generations of time. So having said that, let's start today, or tonight, we'll start this conversation talking about the perspective of the second to youngest generation. Well, no, at this point we've got Gen Zers, we got Gen Y, and then Alpha. So I want to focus on the Gen Zers for a second. It's the group after millennials, right? And I feel like with this group, similar to millennials, there's been a big shift. With us, the big shift was going from where we were in an analog period to going to a digital period. I feel like with the Gen Zers, the big shift has been social. It's been the testing of social dynamics. That's been their big movement and shift as we interact with each other as human beings. I feel like that's been sort of their theme in coming into the space of our world. So today, in reference to the Gen Z, I want to talk about three things. I want to talk about patience, I want to talk about recovery, and I want to talk about critical thinking. So I feel like the shift that's happened with the Gen Zers has been, like you said, social testing. And so I feel like the areas that we've seen come up to be most contentious have been those three. And so let's talk about patience. So I feel like patience has been the big thing for the generation that I'm talking about. For the generations, for children, right, who are growing up and learning maturity. And this day that we're in right now, it's very difficult for people to remember the importance of preserving, your patience when people manifest so quickly. They get rich overnight. They are able to take a flight to, somewhere and do some amazing things in the span of, just a short few hours, or you see someone accomplish something amazing in their result, or in celebration of accomplishment, but you never see the hard work. So to the consumer or to the receiver of the information, on the other end, it looks like things have been created instantaneously, right? So that's patience. The second one is recovery. I feel like the Gen Zers, generation after millennials, have a big contention point, And we can look at it both ways, up or down. A lot of it, I feel like, has been problematic, though, for the generation, because the times that we're in haven't really been catering to group efforts that are in the direction of, self-improvement. Things are really in a direction of attention, hoarding, and what we see today is representative of the capitalist environment. And so we don't really find too much focus on things like self-recovery, right? And I'm talking about moments when folks have been embarrassed, moments when people have faced major loss, clear failure, when you are the loser of a match and you have to come back from that. I feel like people before, we dealt with recovery differently, partially because there was a level of privacy, but more important than that, I felt like the times they were not riddled with options for you. Today you can quit something and pick up another activity tomorrow, and you can engage in that process endlessly, almost without ever having to repeat, that original thing you started. The internet has given us so many options that we've lost tenacity for a trade-off of options. And the third thing is critical thinking. I feel like the access to which we have, or reframed ourselves to lean to the access, because it's not really so much what we have access to, as much as it is ourselves, being unchecked. And we can include anyone in the conversation about, the Gen Zers, but I think that they represent, just like the millennials, we represent something that we've seen in everyone. And so this response, or this video, these points are really in response to that idea that the generations, we represent something as we come and emerge, and that thing that we represent is seen throughout major groups and the world, really. So critical thinking, right, has become a major contention as well, because you don't need to have an original point of thought when there are so many different original points of thought and duplications of that. At a certain point, you just hear total noise. You've got noise from this and that platforms. I think there's Twitter, there's Threads, and after a while, you feel like there's so many opinions, there's so much communication that, well, if you just stop communicating, if you just stop talking for a while, there's that, right? But then there's really even deeper, the fact that one wouldn't be communicating their opinion, and they wouldn't have a chance to offer critical thinking. For us to block out the noise, we would have to find a way to eliminate distractions. Now, you guys know, Gen Zers, you guys know yourselves. The distractions are plentiful today, but I find that in, this group, this generation, they are quite represented by a lot of the distractions. And there's quite a magnetism and an attraction to those things today that distract us. And I feel like it's not so much of a bad thing, but again, I think it's related to the fact that genders are here to test the social norms, you know, and the things that are distracting us today are the things that really draw into question the topics, the conversations, and the scenarios that really draw into question the social dynamics as they have stood throughout tradition and why they may need to change and maybe what they're changing to. We hear a lot of people argue about the dynamics of how people should be, but some of it is warranted, some of it isn't. But I think that these ideas, they represent the points of concern and where progress kind of lies with our discourse as far as the younger generation. And by younger, we're talking Gen Z tonight. And yeah, I think for the next topic, we're gonna switch off. We're gonna talk about something a little different. It won't be down this rabbit hole for now. We'll come back to it, and we'll pick up our conversations about time and about the generations and their response to each other, their ideas, my ideas in the matter, and maybe on how we can come together a little bit more and work on things where people have clear roles based on, what our focus is. I feel like we've all come, like I said, for some sort of focus, some sort of reason, and it's kind of themed throughout our group, if you will, respectively. So with that, I'll leave you with the rain and just some good energy. Hopefully you guys liked what we talked about here, and hopefully you guys will like the next conversation and we switch off to a new topic. We've done AI so far. We talked about social media. We talked about people, thinking about silence, and so many other things I pretty much got in store. But with that, I'll end for tonight. All right, guys. Peace.